if we're not recognizing and in tune with what's happening in our body, we can't acknowledge it. We can't validate it. We are dismissive of it. And usually, like growing up and in childhood, and depends if we're from a very destructive home, your feelings most likely have been dismissed and have been invalidated. So, really, I think, and as an adult, you're responsible. Going back to that responsibility piece, you're responsible for acknowledging your feelings and what you're feeling in this moment and where that sits for you. And it tells you so much about kind of where you're at, right? And how much you can handle in that moment and maybe what your capacity is. So, just taking that one moment to reflect and be like,
welcome to the Becoming Sound podcast, where we dive into the tough stuff and try to find the humor in the hot mess of being an adult child. Join me as we peel back the layers on growing up in dysfunction, navigating substance abuse, mental health challenges, and everything in between.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Becoming Sound podcast. I'm Krista Zaft, and if you're joining me for the first time, welcome to my little corner of the podcast world. I'm glad you joined me. And wherever you're listening from, please click on the follow or the subscribe button, and it really helps to boost my content and get this podcast out to the people who need it. So I have Vanessa Iceton on the show today, and I met her at a speaking workshop, and she is so passionate about what she does. Vanessa is a registered psychologist and is the owner and CEO of Pearl Psychological. As a registered psychologist, she wholeheartedly believes in the transformative power of healing and personal growth. Vanessa has long-term experience working with youth, with adults, with couples, and groups with a wide variety of mental health illnesses. She is eager and passionate to learn and grow as a therapist and to help make a real difference in the world with culturally diverse and socially vulnerable populations. Her positive and professional nature allow her to collectively learn and share information related to common problems, interests, ideas, and best practices. Vanessa is skilled and trained in the delivery of evidence-based therapies such as CBT, EMDR, and ART, which we're going to talk a little bit about. She is also a grief recovery specialist, and she runs a grief recovery support group. We're going to talk about what grief recovery looks like, and honestly, it's not what you think. We're also going to dive into emotional regulation and what that looks like. There are a lot of valuable and aha moments in this conversation between Vanessa and I. So you won't want to miss this whole episode. I am so excited. So let's dive in. Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
good. Thanks, Krista, for having me. I appreciate it.
Good. So I want you to talk a little bit about what drew you to psychology and how your story shaped that path for you.
Yeah, I think I was probably around maybe like 11 years old or something like that. And I kind of remember, asking around being like, "Hey, what is something that I can do to like help people?" And people had always come to talk to me about like advice or like, "Vanessa, what's your opinion?" And I think at the time I was very honest and blunt, and probably more aggressive in the communication style that I gave people. And I think it wasn't until over time I had kind of learned that, there's assertive communication and there's a different and healthy way to approach this. And as I kind of became aware of that, I really kind of locked in on being able to provide a little bit more insight to people and help bring that awareness. And as people were like, "Oh, that makes sense," or there was more of that kind of like aha moment. And I was like, "What can I do with this?" And psychology and psychologist was the kind of job that I knew that I always wanted to do. It took a very long time to get here, but it definitely is extremely rewarding now. And I think some of my history and past has also shaped that. Growing up, stuff in childhood, bullying, being teased, just kind of navigating some of the younger youth years of things that you go through, losing friends. I'm like job loss, even in some of that, navigating life's transitions and changes. What do I want to do? What am I going to be? Taking responsibilities for things. And I think I really have learned over time that I'm like within the psychology field, it's really about taking ownership and responsibility of the stuff that you do, right? And so I was kind of like, I want to do that. And I want to help bring people to that aha moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that responsibility piece is huge. And I mean responsibility in what you do, but also personal responsibility. And it can be tough work to dive
Yes.
into really taking ownership of your behavior and all that kind of stuff, right? And so, yeah,
Mm. It's
completely
such a
relate.
vulnerable state, kind of
Hmm.
taking responsibility and being like, I was wrong, or I'll admit that dot dot dot. And it is really, letting those defenses and those protectors down to say, hey, like I'm also at fault and it's okay. And I'm okay to admit that. So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Some
giving
people think
yourself
it's like
permission.
strength, but I think
Yeah,
it's yeah,
yeah,
it's just
exactly.
insight.
Yeah, just giving yourself permission to be human, right?
Mhm.
Like, yeah, like everybody makes mistakes. When you show up for yourself like that, that's huge in starting to recover from whatever it is, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, I love
yeah.
that. The showing up for yourself. I was just having a team meeting with my colleagues yesterday, and we that was like kind of the theme of really like what do we provide and what do we offer to people? And that first initial ask for help or that first initial
Mhm.
call or the reach out or the email or the booking the appointment is that person showing up for themselves and really being aware that like you've already made the step to make that change and you've already admitted to yourself and been vulnerable with yourself to say, "Hey, something's going on. I'm challenged right now or I'm stressed and I need help." And that's like people don't even think that that's a request to ask for help, but it is. It's the first step. So
Oh,
making people
it's
aware of
huge.
that.
Yeah, even just that, what you just said, that tiny little celebration in saying that, like what you just did is huge. Like that little piece, I think that's a piece if I would have known that years ago, it would have made all the difference in my life, you know? So that's big. I
Yeah, I
want
like how
to,
you even
you,
said that too. Sorry to interrupt, but I,
no,
I
that's
wanted to
okay.
kind of indicate that. But there's always this thing of like, what would I have told myself like then? And I think reflecting on that to be like, why not now, right? That if I could tell myself something today, what would that thing be today, as opposed to looking at from the past tense of like, if I would have known, right? And it's
Yeah,
like, what do I know now that can help me move forward and progress to the next thing?
yeah, 100%, 100%. Because there's always a path up to that, but once you get to that point, you really have to celebrate that's where you are
Mhm.
and where it can take you, right? So yeah, I love that. You are a grief recovery specialist. Do you want to kind of explain what that entails?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's a really big piece of the work that I do with my clients. So grief recovery specialist in the grief recovery method. If anyone has ever heard of the grief recovery handbook, that's what all of this kind of stems from. It's an action-based, evidence-based program where you're actioning the things, the structure of the book to recover and heal from the grief of something. It doesn't have to be anything in particular or any type of loss in particular. It can be absolutely any type of loss. So I run a grief recovery support group. I also can run the program individually. It just depends on where the person is at in their healing process. I'll usually kind of bring it in, but it's very structured. So each week is very particular homework assignment, and it's recovering from the emotional communications that were either never heard, that need to be said again, or with having someone hear us say them. A lot of the time, if it is within loss or say death or divorce, or loss of relationship, we're unable to share those things of an emotional nature. And so, with having someone hear us say them, it also helps the person to feel very validated in that communication.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think typically there's a misunderstanding that if you're in grief, it's because you've lost someone or because you've went through a divorce or just usually loss is what comes to mind first, right? Like, oh, I'm grieving, and they're like, oh, someone must have died. And that's not
Yeah.
always what it looks like, but how does it relate to, let's say, like childhood dysfunction? Like you grew up in this chaotic, maybe traumatic environment, and there is grief there, but it doesn't
Mhm.
look like what everyone thinks it looks like, right? Can you talk about that?
Definitely. So grief is like the conflicting feelings of an emotional nature. And it's about the hopes, dreams, and expectations that we had for that relationship. So whether it's a relationship with our parents or with our sibling or with that friend or within school or anything, right? So it's about the hopes, dreams, and expectations that have been severed or lost. So, even in a career, as an example, or the relationship that we even thought about ourselves. So, there's things like identity loss can be a big thing. um, Loss of faith, loss of like as a miscarriage or loss of a child, not even being able to have a child, so to speak, as well could be a loss. Loss of health. I have celiac disease. That completely changed my life. So my hopes, dreams, and expectations that I had even around food, it has completely changed. So those are all types of losses. So people, yeah, usually do consider, oh, has someone died if we say a loss? And it's like, no, there's so many other forms of losses that we can experience.
Yeah, no kidding. Even around the health thing, I never thought of it till you said it like that. When you do suffer from an ailment like that, that really prevents you from enjoying the same things other people enjoy. It's a loss.
Mhm.
There's definitely some grief attached to that for sure. Can you talk about how unresolved childhood grief can just show up in like adult relationships or later on in your adult life? How does that usually show up?
Yeah, for sure. It can show up in so many different ways. Like I think there's whether it's somatic, like I kind of want to talk about the body a little bit here, is
Hmm.
that, grief stems from the feelings of hurt and pain. So when we have that hurt and pain, it's going to show up in our body. And usually this is like a learned experience of what we were either told or not told to do with that grief, right? So it's like, oh, my friend is bullying me, and maybe that caused panic in our chest, and or maybe we cried and it kind of showed up in our eyes. And if we were told like, hey, don't cry, then it's going to get stuck somewhere else in our body. And so that continuously progresses and challenges us, and then usually we avoid or we escape the grief, right, or the feelings of grief, and then it kind of creates this chaos in our body, and we don't really know what to do with it. So whether that's trauma or other things that have happened in our childhood, the things that we were told or told not to do, the core beliefs that have been reinforced, maybe like I'm not good enough or I'm worthless or I'm a failure, those also show up as grief and loss, right? And then it gets kind of stuck in our body, and we don't know what to do with it. We don't know how to regulate from it. We don't know how to handle it, so to speak. And it becomes another failure. It becomes something else that I'm not good at, so to speak. And it reinforces that same cycle.
Yeah. And I mean, it shows up as actual physical pain too, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I definitely, I physically was hugely aware of it when my son was going through his addiction. I was pushing down all the stuff and the stress, and it actually caused my body to go into a really harsh physical reaction. And then my son got into recovery about a month later. Every symptom disappeared. Like all the pain just disappeared. It's the first time I made a direct correlation to the amount of stress I was under and what I was pushing down and the actual physical pain of that. It was crazy. I had a hard
So
time
huge.
wrapping my head around it.
Yeah, it is amazing. And thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your story. Like, I think it's every client that kind of sits on my couch, I'm like, okay, where do you feel this in your body? And it doesn't even matter what feeling it can be. It can be a positive or negative one. But if we're not recognizing and in tune with what's happening in our body, we can't acknowledge it. We can't validate it. We are dismissive of it. And usually, like growing up and in childhood, and depends if we're from a very destructive home, your feelings most likely have been dismissed and have been invalidated. So, really, I think, and as an adult, you're responsible. Going back to that responsibility piece, you're responsible for acknowledging your feelings and what you're feeling in this moment and where that sits for you. And it tells you so much about kind of where you're at, right? And how much you can handle in that moment, and maybe what your capacity is. So, just taking that one moment to reflect and be like, my stomach stomach kind of hurts right now, or oh, I'm feeling butterflies, right? Because those differences in
Uh-huh.
those feelings, or oh, I'm clenching my jaw right now. Those are t telltale signs of what we're experiencing in the here and the now in the present moment. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a lot more of it, just people aren't recognizing that that's what it
Mhm.
is. And I mean, like, I'm no doctor or anything, but it's sometimes you can have chronic pain, like
Mhm.
chronic issues that you don't correlate to some sort of emotional thing that happened years ago because you pushed it down or pushed it out of your mind, and you're actually carrying it in your body as this pain, like,
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah, there's
true.
a really good book out there. Like it's very thick.
Oh
But maybe
yes.
you've heard of it. The Body Keeps the
Yes.
Score.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all about those somatic experiences of
Mhm.
like your body is telling you what you need, right? And I think it's really hard for a lot of people to identify, well, what do I need right now? And a lot of
Mhm.
people will say, I don't know. And I think if we just were listening, took that time and that pause or that break to say, what do I need? And we listen to our body, it would really tell you what I need, right? That
Mhm.
might be sleep, it might be some water, it might need, I need a hug right now. And that would
Yeah.
really kind of open up the doors for vulnerability and acceptance of needs.
hmm What are a couple practices that you would suggest to people to try to listen to themselves? Because
Mhm.
it sounds easy, right? Well, you just need to listen, but you need to do some very specific things to get to that place where you can hear what's going
Yeah.
on. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Definitely. I think, we talk about kind of mindfulness as being a big practice these days. And I think the word can tend to sometimes be overused or overused
Uh-huh.
incorrectly. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
just be mindful. And I think it's a
Yeah.
very intentional practice where we are taking that time to kind of sit with. And I heard a quote a while back about we're human beings, not human doings. And I found like I really resonated with this and that autopilot doing mode where we're constantly like on the go and our society is so fast paced that it's just we're constantly doing and on to the next thing and we have to keep busy, which is a myth of grief in the Grief Recovery Handbook. And so when we're just being with and we're listening and we're kind of in tune with what's going on. And this is a practice. It's an intentional practice to kind of say, hey, I'm going to take 5 and sit with myself right now and assess where I'm at and what I'm doing. So I think that's one of the practices that I try and use. And it can be like, I have a 10-minute break in between sessions and I have a recliner. So sometimes I'll kick back my chair and recline and be like, ah, and I kind of just take that pause and that moment.
Yeah.
And whether it's for 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, it's
Yeah.
okay to kind of give myself that rest and permission, like you said earlier, give myself permission to just be. And eventually over time, because people are like, well, how do I do just be, right? And I think just over time we kind of you learn to like
Yeah.
sit in the uncomfortableness, and then eventually that uncomfortableness turns to relaxation, turns to
Mhm.
relief, turns to the body is becoming vulnerable again to sit with. So that's one practice I would say that really helps. I think the other one is, of course, some deep breathing. The thing that we
Mhm.
have is we have our breath, right? We have our pulse, we have our vitals, and kind of really taking those big, solid belly breaths. So not the chest breath. It really needs to come from the belly and really kind of learning how to breathe from the belly so that we can kind of
Mhm.
fill up our entire lungs, fill up the belly, and then let that go. So box breathing, breathing out colors of the rainbow, breathing in and out sparkles, or whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
Those types of things can be really helpful to kind of sit in that mindfulness as well.
Mhm. I actually learned box breathing a few years ago and I use it to fall asleep.
Mm,
So because you're intentionally shutting down that part of your system that is in like go, 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 go. And when you count, like I count all the way to 8, which is a lot. It's a long box breath. So I count to 8, I hold it for 8, and then I breathe out for 8.
mhm.
And I get like 2 times or 3 times through that, and I'm like, gone. And so it's great
Exactly.
for yeah, sleeping too, but it's very intentional and you really
Yeah.
don't have the capacity while you're doing that to think much. It's really about getting quiet.
It is. Yeah, I love that. And I love like the intention. Like it is. Like people are like, I don't have the time. I'm like, we make time to do other things though. So we have to
Yeah.
make time to be intentional and sit with our breath and just to be. And like you said earlier, that kind of that chaos, that anxiety, the things that we like grow up in our childhood, we always there's always this like don't do that or don't do this. And I think it's like what do I choose to do? What am I going to choose to intentionally do right now? If at the time what I needed in that moment was to cry or was to, vent or to get a hug, like we can give ourselves a hug. You can buy hug your pillow, a stuffed animal, like scream in a pillow, like do something that
Uh-huh.
you need to do in that moment because you have control to do it. So it's like I choose today to do what, right? With my time and with my intention. So I think that's also really important is, you get to choose, be in control of what your destiny is and focus on that anxiety, focus on that chaos, figuring out what your homeostasis regulation level is, right? So usually with anxiety, we're always up and there's always this like alarm bell ringing in the back, right? And I think with taking that pause, we can kind of sit and allow ourselves to kind of regulate and figure out what your baseline and what your new baseline is going to be.
Mhm. Yeah, that speaks a lot to what I want to talk to you too about nervous system regulation. And I think that if I took myself back about 20 years, I was really in that unregulated state. I was very angry. I I would go from being totally fine to very sad or withdrawn. So just explain what it means and what are the common signs that your nervous system isn't regulated.
Yeah, really good noticing. I think it could potentially be a bit different for everybody. However, like for the most part, we do have our common response. So I think going into the stress response cycle, you're gonna notice that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? And so really recognizing, oh, when I have a stressor, and maybe I'll say first, we got to figure out what that stressor is. If you don't know what
Yeah.
your triggers are and who is triggering you or what is triggering you, is it that email? Is it that red notification dot on your phone? Is it the sound of your mom's voice? Is it, a coworker or your child? I think we got to figure out what that stressor is and that trigger is first. Once we have that, then we can say, okay, with that, what do I do? Do I freeze? Do I completely shut down? Do I, isolate myself? Do I escape or avoid? Do I fight? Do I fight back? Do I get defensive? Do I retaliate? Do I yell? Do I lash out? What do I do? Or do I flee? Do I escape? Do I run away? That might be different responses for different people. So in that fight, we might feel it in our hands or in our throat or our voice if we're lashing out and yelling. Do I feel it if I'm escaping or running and fleeing? Do I feel it in my feet or my legs or my hips? So sometimes we're going to notice the regulation in other ways or the feeling, sorry, in other ways. And then to be able to regulate is again identifying the feeling. So I have a feeling wheel pillow behind me that sits in each of my therapy rooms. The
Yeah.
feeling wheel can be found on the internet, of course, but I think just really recognizing what is the feeling? So people will notice the six main feelings, which is happiness, fear, sadness, disgust, surprise. Those are the five main. And then anything kind of coming out from that is what we call primary feelings. And those primary feelings are what we actually want to identify. So come anxiety, resentment, hurt, pain, pleasure could be part of that. So really identifying the outskirts of the feeling wheel to notice, okay, here's what I need to regulate. If it's resentment, I got to work on forgiveness. And then from there, we kind of go from there.
Well, I wanted to say too about the feeling wheel. I think it's so important too, and we don't talk about it enough because we really aren't taught this stuff. We are just made aware in our childhood and growing up of really those just the five or six main feelings, and that's all we gravitate towards. I mean, this is one reason to seek out a therapist because that is not something that you can do by yourself very easily. And
Like,
you just don't have the language, the words, and the skills to bring that up and help
exactly.
someone really get clarity on what's going on and some of those feelings. So, yeah, seek
You
out
said it so
therapy.
well there. Yeah, you said
Yeah.
it so well. Yeah, we're given those faces. Like I looked to like kids stuff and I was like, oh, there's like the little faces, which are the regular
Yeah.
happy, sad,
Yeah.
upset, angry, or and I'm like, but what's behind that? What is the thing?
Yeah.
What's the foundation that's really coming up for you, right? And it's like if it's my if it's my friend who sends me a message and I'm like, wow, and then I'm all of a sudden noticing that, I want to notice where is that in my body? How does this change me? What is my response to it? And yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know. Like even I wasn't probably able to figure that out from a young age. Like I had to see a therapist to know what's happening. Like, and I
Yeah.
think, and this also reflects like what has happened to me to trigger that response. So people
Yeah.
will a lot of the time be like, "What's wrong with me?" Right? I'll have that as a client say that all the time, and I'm like, it's nothing's wrong with you. You just haven't been
Yeah.
able to identify what has happened to you and haven't been able to honor your narrative and your truth
Mhm.
behind your story of what has happened to you. And that really hits home for people to then be able to like say, ah, the feeling associated with what has happened to me is this. And I love that you kind of mentioned that clarity and that's the aha moment and
Mhm.
watching that in therapy is so cool to
Yeah.
see that little light bulb and for people to make those connections and the map it out, so to speak, for themselves.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, for sure. And such a key piece is we wrap our identities up in what's going on inside for us. Like,
Mhm.
why am I like this? Why can't I do better? Like, this is who I am. I hear people, well, that's just who I am, so they don't
Mm.
want to change the behavior. And I think a big light bulb moment for me was realizing that all of this stuff isn't who I am. It's not my
Mhm.
identity. I just needed someone to help me identify it and say, look, this is stuff that happened to you.
Yeah.
Not because of you, or that's not who you are in your core. It's
Mhm.
these are just things that happen, and now you can learn how to find your authentic self and stuff. So that's
Exactly.
a
I think
huge
there's this
piece.
big mask that people, this facade that people can that
Mhm.
put on and we walk around kind of being like, I need to be strong and I need to be powerful and I need to prove people and I need to be perfect. And there's a lot of needs that are the driver. I need to justify myself. That these are the drivers of our core beliefs of like, if I need to justify and prove to people that I'm enough or that I'm worthy, we're constantly seeking that external validation. We're not internally validating self, being like, I'm worthy, and I don't have to prove. I just need to prove it to myself that I'm worthy,
Yeah.
and really finding that voice from within to connect with and say, hey, this is enough. Right. So it's not I am good enough. It's just I am enough. And that's all that I need. Right. As opposed to what other people need and seeking that external validation from other people or the acknowledgement or the praise. It's like, let's praise
Mhm.
ourselves.
No
Let's,
kidding.
give ourselves a round of applause for this thing that we're doing, for waking up, for brushing our
Yeah.
teeth, for those small accomplishments that we did do.
Yeah, 100%. It's just okay to be human. We're just here to have this human experience. It's different for everybody. Yet it's so similar, and if we just connected on that level, we could understand each other better and realize we don't have to compare and keep up with the Joneses and that whole, yeah, it's crazy.
Oh,
It's
for
crazy.
sure. Yeah, I think comparisons is kind of ruining our society, right? And
Yes.
constantly minimizing our own qualities and our worth and magnifying other people's attributes
Yeah.
and really, the shoulding and musting and setting those unrealistic demands or pressures on self or others and living up to these high expectations that are completely unattainable. And so really kind of, helping or getting that guidance of a therapist can be very eye-opening and enlightening and
Mhm.
relieving to relieve that pressure and the expectations and say, what about me? What can I just do? And I kind of want to bring up the fact that a lot of people will use the word selfishness. They'll be like, oh, but focusing on me or putting myself as a priority is seen as selfish. And it's just not the definition of selfishness. And that's what, if we were being selfish, we would not have any regard for anybody else. And I think we always have a regard, for the most part, about other people. It's just we really sometimes have to recenter and reground to where am I at? And if I don't put my life mask on first, I can't help other people and I can't worry about other things going on in my life if I'm not okay and I don't have the capacity to help. So, really putting yourself first is going to be all of the change that we need.
Yeah, I think if you kind of think about it like the scales, I mean, we're so used to pouring into everyone else's cup. Our self-care looks like completely imbalanced most of the time. It sounds so cheesy, but I learned this
I
so
know.
early in my life, the oxygen mask thing. If you really think about it, you really cannot save anyone else if you're not breathing, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
it's the same thing, right? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
totally
exactly.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and like gauging, I kind of even on my Instagram the other day I posted a little thing of kind of we're so used to our cell phones and even my computer battery dying. I think it's one of those things that like we wouldn't let our cell phone battery die, right? Because we feel like we need to be connected, and it's like, but why am I letting my own battery die? And why am I not
Yes.
choosing to recharge and reset? And that might look different for everything. So I want to bring it back to your regulation or regulating your body and stuff. And that might look different for everyone. And, mine is like going out with the girls or, watching a movie, sitting with and playing with my dog. Golfing is a big outlet for me, even though that might cause more stress sometimes. But
Fun stress though.
it's really about kind of finding that thing that helps you reset and like being like, today I choose me to do this. And attending like a chiropractor appointment or massage or booking that nail appointment or whatever it is like what is that thing that fills up your cup. And like I said, kicking back in my recliner during or after a session is just that 1 minute of a reset, and then I'm like, okay, I'm ready, right? And it's whatever I need in that moment. So yeah,
Yeah.
what are some things that you do to kind of reset and recharge?
Me, I love to journal. And you know what? The odd time, I don't watch TV or anything, but if I really just want to zone out, I will pick like a movie or something on Netflix and just like I put my headphones on. I'm like, I'm gonna be gone for 2 hours,
Yeah, that's
and haven't
okay.
left the house, right? But just stuff like that. I love to be outside. Like I love taking a walk. There's something about the fresh air and like I could argue with myself for 20 minutes before I put those shoes on. But once I'm out there, not only is the dog having a great time, but it's the sun, the air, everything.
Yeah.
And I live in the country, so it's absolutely gorgeous to be able to go outside and walk in such beautiful scenery. But those things really recharge me. So
Amazing.
yeah,
And I love how you kind of even mentioned it might take you 20 minutes
yeah,
to put on those shoes and get there. And like this is the double-edged sword sometimes of depression or doing, right? Is that on one end, I either have to activate myself or I have to motivate myself to do something. And so I get up and put on the shoes, that activation of, or I have to motivate by being like, okay, the outside is going to make me feel good. That fresh air is recharging. My dog's going to love it, and da da da. And then we got to like, so it's either the behavior or the thought, which is
yeah,
ultimately going to make us feel something different. And then again, validating that feeling to say, hey, here's where I'm at right now. And that exhaustion went and up 40% to now I feel joy when I'm outside. So,
yeah.
it's really good noticing and reflecting even that like that something that I needed to
Mhm.
do.
Exactly. And that looks different for everybody, right? So whatever kind of refills. And for some people, honestly, it's just getting more sleep
Yeah.
or take a nap in the afternoon,
I love that.
I love naps too. Napping is not just for old people and little
It is
kids.
not.
It doesn't have to be long. 15 minutes, honestly, it's
Yes.
awesome.
I do
Yeah.
say, I'm like, put a limit on that. I usually say half an hour. It takes like sometimes 10 minutes to fall asleep. 20 minutes is a good recharge of a REM cycle. So once you
Huh?
get through at least one REM cycle, you're good. So anyone
Nice.
that's sleeping more than that, you're probably going to feel more exhausted after. So because
Okay.
we're thinking that the body needs sleep. So I say keep it to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good idea. I know
Mhm.
I've done that. I've actually fallen asleep and then you're like an hour and some in and I'm like, why do I feel like I've been hit by a truck?
Yes.
Yeah. It's like zombie land after that.
Yes. It's and it almost becomes like not helpful. So yeah, definitely got to
Yeah,
put a limit on things. And that's kind of one of those boundaries, right? Really
exactly.
setting our limits with ourselves to know, okay, it could just be 10 minutes, it could be a half an hour, it could be that hour of like what
Yeah.
I need in that moment and setting that boundary with self, right? It would be hard to
Mhm.
set boundaries with other people if we are not respecting them ourselves.
That's right. Exactly. 100%. I was going to ask you some strategies and stuff, but you just explained that beautifully. So, what are some really simple things you would start with if someone's really in a shutdown mode, though? You
Mhm.
know, because there's different levels. Everyone comes into this differently and their awareness differently. But if you're
Yeah.
really feeling shut down, maybe in a depression or an anxiety or even in a panic attack, you know, what are some simple things that people can do to bring themselves back to a more grounded state?
Yeah, I with some of my trauma clients and depressed clients or who shut down in that notice, I guess it doesn't really matter where that shutdown is coming from.
Uh-huh.
I'll clarify that. But I use a strategy called bilateral stimulation or tapping. So it's this
Okay.
butterfly hug kind of just up on your collarbone,
Oh,
and then you would
nice.
just alternate tapping. So just doing that bilateral stimulation and visualizing a calm place for you. So, calm place is something that you felt where you felt as an adult, again, wanting to take us out of that childhood, maybe stuff that we've been through
Uh-huh.
as an adult, someplace where you felt most comfortable, calm, and secure. So it can be in your home, in nature, or in your imagination. And then you would just kind of do that bilateral
Uh-huh.
stimulation, that bilateral hug. It can also be kind of on your arms and you can't really see, or tapping kind of on your legs. Just a nice, slow, gentle tap while we're doing the deep breathing and while you're visualizing your calm place can be
Uh-huh.
extremely helpful in those moments. Sometimes we forget. So even if you don't do the tapping, just visualizing that calm place can be really grounding. So something
Uh-huh.
that you see, something that you hear, feel, smell, and what you sense in your body in that calm
Yeah.
place can really bring you there. So that would be probably my biggest go-to for someone who's noticing the shutdown, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
awesome. I actually just started back in therapy myself,
Mhm.
and I just from doing this podcast, it's a lot of heavy stuff, right? And
Yeah.
I'm always talking about this stuff, and although it's like near and dear to my heart, and I love it, stuff comes up, right? Like for
Mhm.
me, stuff comes up, and I haven't been in therapy for a while, so I went back, and we actually just started EMDR,
Ah,
and that's the first thing that she got me to do was tap on my legs, like really calm. I actually found that so calming. I haven't done a lot of tapping before. I've had people on that do it and had it demonstrated, but yeah, it's really soothing. And to
good.
practice that not just when you're in a heightened
Yes.
state,
Thank
because you
you.
don't
Yeah.
know when you're in that state, it's like you don't know what to use because
Right.
you're not thinking like that. But it's like anything, you know, we don't just learn to do something one time and then it's instantly in our brain, but just practice that. Like I love that
Yeah.
love butterfly one.
Mm.
Just practicing that when you're feeling calm can
Yeah.
actually recall, right? You can recall it.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you for bringing
Yeah.
that. Like I always say that is that that's also a practice, right? And I think
Uh-huh.
over time, the more that we use it, the easier it will become to get there. And then people are like, "Oh, I don't even need to tap. I can just visualize it, and my body just automatically knows where to go." And I love
Nice.
that. I'm like, even that
Yeah.
cue word that you set up with your therapist to trigger that word.
Uh-huh.
Um, is really helpful, and just bringing you to that space in that moment. So
Yeah.
yeah, EMDR, I absolutely love it. It's extremely helpful for people
Mhm.
who have experienced trauma, but can also be used with depression, anxiety, phobias,
Mhm.
PTSD. There's many other ways and things that people can use for EMDR, and it's extremely helpful. So I have a
Yeah.
couple
Well, this
clinicians
is,
that also use it. So
yeah.
yeah, our
This is my
practice
first
is,
experience with it. So
yeah.
I read a lot about it and I've had people explain it to me, but so this is my first actual experience with it, which is
Mhm.
great. So I'm looking forward to it and I
Yes.
find it very peaceful. Like it's, yeah, I didn't know what to expect, but I'm actually liking it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Perfect.
so that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a really somatic experience as well. So if you're
Yeah.
wanting to, going back to that childhood stuff, if you're wanting to kind of work through that childhood
Mhm.
dysregulation somatically, you're really gonna, I think EMDR could be a really good process. I also do accelerated resolution therapy, which is ART. So that can
Okay.
also be, it's kind of a little bit of an offshoot of EMDR. It does use the
Okay.
bilateral eye movements instead of the stimulation, but it is also extremely helpful and a little bit faster for targeted instances as well. So just
Okay.
another
How is it different than EMDR? Like just give it a little, I've heard of it before, but I
the
haven't
script
explored it.
is, yeah, the script is different and it's more targeted. So instead of EMDR is a little bit more about the free association. So kind of letting your brain go from a targeted instance to free association, whereas
Mhm.
ART is very targeted on one instant, and you can resolve it within a session or two. It's
Okay,
actually
wow.
really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially for people who are a little nervous about that and maybe reluctant to walk through that, knowing that this process can work and it's fast. So that's kind of cool. Yeah,
For sure.
I love that. Okay, so I have a question for you. If you
Yeah.
could leave one message or truth with someone who grew up in chaos and is really just only learning this now, what would it be?
I'm gonna go with, I think, maybe if people can connect with that inner child, you little girl, you little boy,
Mhm.
you just doesn't know how to heal, doesn't know how to respond. And adult you has to take responsibility for learning how to respond. And I think, if that little girl you is asking for a hug, or that little boy you just needs kind of a pat on the back, or whatever that looks like, or to be told, good job, that's what we have to heal. So taking that little boy, little girl you into therapy as adult you, because you have a choice and can choose something different, better, or more. That's what I would say. That's what's going to help. So, kind of making that decision to heal younger self who has been through chaos, who doesn't want to experience those things anymore, whether that's flashbacks, nightmares, night terrors, sweats, lack of
Uh-huh.
sleeping, dysregulation, shaking, any of those symptoms. Let's, come heal yourself, make that choice and
Mhm.
choose to. My team kind of also does offer a 10-minute free consult to make sure that you're suited with the correct clinician. I know that
Mhm.
can be a fear for some people, is that, oh, well, I only have this much in benefits, or I don't have much money, or whatever the situation.
Yeah.
I think choosing the correct counselor that can relate to you and that you connect with is makes the world of difference.
Mhm.
You know, I've even as a therapist again, I haven't jived with some of the therapists I've been with, and I've had to choose to make that change as well. So don't give up also after the first one. If the first one doesn't work out, maybe it's just wasn't a good relationship, or didn't build that rapport, or maybe that personality didn't match. So I think really just making sure that you're choosing someone that you feel safe with, comfortable
Mhm.
with, and that you can be vulnerable, a space that you can feel vulnerable in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So important. So important. Yeah. Yeah. Don't give up. That's definitely one piece of advice is go
Mhm.
try someone else if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
We pick out pairs of shoes with more thought. Like,
Yes,
you don't
yes.
just, I'll just take these shoes off the shelf. Doesn't matter what size they are. Doesn't matter. If they don't fit you, it's not going to work, right? So you
So
kind of have to think
true.
about it that way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, so my last question to you is what would one piece of advice be to your younger self
Mm.
if you were just starting to make sense of everything?
Mhm. It would have been to give yourself permission to sit in, can I swear? To sit in the shit?
Yes.
To sit in the shit. Um,
Awesome.
so I think give yourself permission to sit with and be and just notice and acknowledge that I am important, right? That I am worthy of this thing, this feeling that I'm having right now. And I think if I would have done that, I don't think that some of the stuff that I've experienced as well would have happened, to be honest. I don't
Mhm.
think my anger would have been an issue. I don't know if I'd have celiac disease, to be honest. I think that was also triggered by some of my history and past. So I'm not quite sure. Like, I think there's things that I would be like, just honor and sit with the feelings.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I couldn't have said it better myself. I wanted to just bring up one thing you said there about the inner child stuff too. And this is something that I'm learning as well. But I think that I've resisted it for so long,
Mm.
is that I always wanted to protect that younger girl. And with that came, well, we don't talk about it then. We don't address it. I'm just going to protect you in this little bubble so no one can hurt you. And that wasn't serving me. What's serving me now is to pull that little girl out and say, you know what, it's safe here to do what you needed to do then. I'll
Mhm.
still protect you, but it's really just safe to feel what you needed to feel,
Yeah.
to cry, to whatever, to express yourself, right? Because I
Mhm.
think that's part of it is we're so protective of our inner
Mhm.
child that we don't want to sit in the shit, like you said,
Mhm.
with them, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What have you got going on or coming up, or any offers out there?
Yeah, for sure. So there is some resources that if the person wanted to reach out, they're more than welcome. Admin@pearlpsychological.com. Feel free, shoot her an email. She will get back to you with some resources, offering also the 10-minute free consult where you're more than welcome to share with either myself. I can help you maybe choose the right clinician, or you can contact one of the other ones that I do have on staff. I do also have a grief recovery support group that will be starting on Tuesday, September 30th. That one's from 6 to 9 and it's for
Mhm.
8 weeks. So you can check out that information on the website. We have capacity for 8 people in that one. Um, I think that's the majority of the events coming up and the offerings, but I'm also willing and open to kind of just see what people are looking for and if I need to also provide them a different direction. I've worked in different areas and different public practice, private practice. So I'm well versed in other knowledge. So we accept benefits as well. So if you have benefits, we do have an intern starting as well in October. So she's going to be at a reduced fee if you don't have benefits or coverage. So that could also be really helpful. There's lots of options. I again,
Mhm.
don't
Yeah,
just don't give up. There's lots of
that's
options
right.
and sliding scale options as well. So
Yeah,
choose you. That's what I would
yeah,
say.
that's right. Awesome. Thank you. And I will list how everyone can get a hold of you in the show notes and everything. And yeah, thank you so much for being with me today. This
Thank
was
you.
very enlightening, and I love what you're doing, and I love the approach that you take, and I'm so glad we met.
Me too. Thank you so much, Krista, for having me. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your story, and I look forward to hearing more of your journey in the future.
Thank you for joining me today on another episode of Becoming Sound. If this episode resonated with you in some way, please share it with someone you care about. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It helps to get this information out to more people who may need it. If you have a sec, I would love a follow on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. While you're there, hit the 5-star rating and give me a review. When you're scrolling, follow me on my social platforms, and I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Have a fabulous day, lots of love and gratitude from me. Please note, the views, information, and opinions expressed during the Becoming Sound podcast series are solely those of the individuals involved. The content of this podcast is to educate, inform, and for entertainment purposes only. This podcast series and the content presented does not constitute for medical or other professional advice or services. If you are in crisis or in need of help, please contact your medical or professional provider.